What really happened with your host, Mike Rivero. You're listening to the Republic Broadcasting Network, where you'll find out what the Fukushima's going on.
And aloha, America. Welcome to our show today. It's Tuesday, October 17th, 2017 here. And before we get into the show, a little word of explanation. What a weekend. We've had. Remember, on last Friday, we were having trouble even connecting to RBN because Skype was having problems. Then this morning, I get on up, and my wife's computer won't turn on. We finally figure out the uninterruptible power supply, just 2 weeks out of the extended service contract, had died, so we're going to have to deal with that as well. And then, we tried to set up connection for the show yesterday, and our local internet was going up and down and up and down and up and down. It would be up, and I'd think, okay, we're good for the show. Then it would go down again. So when I called John Stadmiller on the cell phone, the regular cell phone system could not get through. Took multiple tries before I could finally get to him and say, you need to get to Mike and tell him to do a best of show. It really feels like the entire country is just falling apart. But we may take solace in the fact that we all know the correct gender pronouns with which to address each other. And I guess that has to count for something. So that's kind of where we are right now. Corporate media is having all kinds of orgasms over the fact that Dow crossed the 23,000 line for the first time. Yes. And you understand that when they treat the stock market numbers like a sporting score, that's a bad sign. So I'm waiting to see the little cheerleaders out there in their gold lame outfits and their pom-poms just cheering it on. But the stock market is totally disconnected from the regular economy. And even stock market experts are saying, I have no idea what's going on. It shouldn't be doing this. Well, it's being manipulated. So that's what's going on with there. Anyway, getting on back to business here. The phone lines are open, 800-313-9443. Mike is in our control room, twiddling our dials, trying to deal with issues from Skype and everything else that's going south on us, and ready to answer the phone when you call on in. As a matter of fact, we've actually got a caller already waiting on the line. So we're going to go to Ralph in Toronto. Aloha, Ralph. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Well, hi there. So nothing quite says cover-up like somebody actually retroactively adjusting government databases.
Yes.
So I was looking at this shooter in Vegas, and it was said he had 2 airplanes. I can actually find 1 airplane that he owned, and I can tell a lot about a person by the kind of airplane they own. Well, his was an SR-20,
okay,
which is a small single-engine airplane. The interesting thing was, of course, all airplanes are identified by an N number.
Yes.
And this airplane was the N number was once used on a Cessna 150 for about 3 or 4 years until it was retired. And then people, when they register a new airplane, can go on and pick up that N number for their airplane. So he picked up that one. Well, what's interesting is that airplane, after he sold it, all those records exist, but after he sold it, it actually ended up in the possession of a company that does defense contracting in Virginia.
Mm-hmm.
They only work for the Defense Department. They were flying it around. You might say, well, that could be just a coincidence. But the interesting thing is that there's all these sidebar databases. So when you file an IFR flight plan, a program called FlightAware picks up your flight, destination and source, and all the points along in between. And this flight, a couple of years earlier, had been logged by this defense company. So they were actually in possession of the airplane and flying it around. And magically now, all the records to do with this aircraft have disappeared, and the only thing you can find is that old Cessna 150 record from years ago. So that somebody actually went into the FAA database and deleted those transactions, and there's no sign of that N number now at all.
Well, it certainly fits the pattern that we've seen emerging about this story, and we're going to have more about Las Vegas further on in the show. Yeah, more and more people are coming forward and saying it just doesn't work. We had somebody send in this video about an audio analysis of the video taken by the taxi driver showing that most of it follows the normal pattern of close gunfire, echo, but there's a couple of echoes in there for which there is no close gunfire. That right there says there was, in fact, a second shooter quite a distance away from the Mandalay Bay Hotel And a lot of people are saying that there are these two very narrow sky towers, and they're shut down. They're not open to the public anymore. They're right next door to the concert venue, and there may have been a shooter in there. So anyway, Ralph, thank you for the update on the...
Well, it is one last thing. It is reassuring to the gun control people that the Mandalay Bay is a gun-free zone. So I guess that keeps us all safe.
It absolutely worked. Absolutely worked here. Yeah, we confirmed that it was a gun-free zone, which again begs the question of how this guy got all these, or how whoever's really behind this got all of these guns up to that room on the 32nd floor with all the TV cameras and everything around there, unless it was a government operation. And again, we're now starting to see indications that the owners of the Mandalay Bay and MGM Entertainment were dumping their stock weeks before this all happened. So they knew something was going to happen. Something was going on, okay?
Well, we're listening in Canada, Mike. It's a great show, and we're listening up here in the north.
All right. Well, thank you very much. Canada's a lovely place, and Claire and I used to visit there on a regular basis when we lived in Washington State. Beautiful, beautiful anthropology museum there in Vancouver. Ralph, we're going to let you go. We're going to take a moment here to do a shout-out to our on-air affiliates who are just now rejoining our network. Getting on to more contemporary news about politics here. Do you remember the company Fusion GPS? This was the opposition research firm responsible for overseeing the creation of the infamous Trump dossier that was written by this British spy, Christopher Steele. And they have been subpoenaed by the Congress to come on in and explain just how this information all came to be in there, given that virtually all of it has now been completely discredited. And so these three co-founders of Fusion GPS are simply saying, we refuse to comply. We will not honor the subpoena ordered by the House Intelligence Committee, Chairman David Nunes. And that's from a letter from their attorneys. Well, I think it might be time to send the whatever congressional law officers are there, slap the handcuffs on them. But it's obvious something's going on there. Did you see how everything's a big cover-up? Experts are saying that the argument that Fusion GPS is using to ask to be excused from testifying is on very, very shaky legal grounds and is unlikely to hold. And the reason they don't want to testify is it's going to come on out. The Trump dossier was a complete fabrication from beginning to end, and that's going to come on out. Now, the FBI has gone ahead and confirmed that former FBI Director James Comey drafted his letter exonerating Hillary Clinton on the email investigation before the investigation had really gotten underway. And so now there's a hue and cry saying, well, we've never had an investigation of this issue, a proper investigation, and we haven't. We need to get one going right now. But again, if I am correct as to what was going on with that email server and the Clinton Foundation, that is a scandal that could bring the entire government down. But it's time to push on this story. It is really, really time to push on this one. Over at Judicial Watch, their president, Tom Fitton, is saying somebody knowingly withheld documents on this Clinton-Lynch tarmac meeting, because over the weekend you had the FBI coming out and say, oh, we found all these papers about the meeting here. That's obstruction of justice right there. So they're going to be looking more into that. And the timing of that meeting and the subsequent handing of a get-out-of-jail-free card to Hillary, the timing is just a little too cute. And this idea that they just met at this airport on the other end of the country to talk about their grandchildren and other such nonsense, no. It's not holding up. They're acting like there's a big secret there that they're trying to keep the lid on. Meanwhile, back over at Judicial Watch, the State Department has revealed that there were 2,800 Huma Abedin government documents on Anthony Weiner's laptop. And there's going to be a hearing about that matter in 2 days, on Thursday. Now remember, much of these documents are classified information. They should not have been outside a secure government computer system. Certainly not on this laptop being shared with Anthony Sexting Weiner, who's wide open to blackmail. Is extraordinarily careless and reckless. And remember, under Title 18, wrong intent, criminal intent, is not required. Negligence is a Title 18 violation that you can, and in this case of Huma Abedin, should go to jail for. Now, somebody over at the FBI is really starting to act like we think the FBI should be doing. They have uncovered more confirmation of Hillary Clinton's uranium deal with Russia, the Uranium One deal, where Hillary Clinton approved Russia's purchase, or leasing actually, of 20% of U.S. uranium, and huge amounts of Russian money were pouring into the Clinton Foundation at the same time. That deserves an investigation, but it's still amazing that we're seeing so many of these liberal politicians and the corporate media still saying, no, we got to investigate Trump. There's something wrong with Trump. We got to go after it. Forget about Hillary. That's coulda, shoulda, woulda. It's in the past here. Now, one of the things that bothers me about Hillary is she's out there making a lot of public appearances. She's doing book signings. She's doing TV interviews. And she apparently was down there in Australia giving a TV interview as part of her worldwide book tour, and basically came on out describing Comey and Assange, saying he shivved me, which, if you don't know the slang for that, means you stab somebody in the back, with an improvised knife or a switchblade. That's what a shiv is. And so Clinton is still out there trying to portray Assange as a tool of Russian intelligence, and scoffed at the idea that he is a champion of free speech and freedom of information, and is out there saying, we need to ask why he felt he needed to do this. Well, I mean, that's pretty obvious. When you see somebody that corrupt in public life, in control of so many aspects of our lives, yeah, you're going to do something about it. That's the motive. That's been my motive. But she's out there trying to attack Assange and Comey, saying they had ulterior corrupt motives. They wanted to keep her from the White House. They were working for the Russians. And what is truly alarming on this is they're out there still talking like they can get Trump out and install Hillary as the president. And so over at InfoWars, they have this plan that's been put together by this Harvard professor, Lessig. And the plan is that Trump gets impeached for colluding with the Russian government during his election campaign. The fact that there's no evidence for that should not stand in any way whatsoever. And then once that happens, in Lessig's fantasy, he suggests Vice President Mike Pence would then resign. The final stage of the plan is Speaker Paul Ryan would be urged to do the right thing and also resign, because he would now be the president. If Trump and Pence leave, the Speaker of the House, under the rules of succession, becomes the president. And the final step of this plan is supposedly Paul Ryan will be convinced to install Hillary Clinton as vice president. Then he leaves, leaving Hillary to become the president. There's only one small problem with this liberal fantasy. The vice president has to be the same party as the president. Would Hillary be willing to change parties to get that Oval Office? Yeah, she probably would. But they're caught up in this fantasy. We're almost a year after that election. And Hillary is still dreaming of finding some way she's going to take that White House. Because in her mind, she worked hard for it, she cheated for it, she murdered people for it, and by golly, she's owed it. So, now, the journalist who basically broke the Panama Papers story was killed on Monday in a car bomb near her home. Daphne Caruana Galizia died on Monday afternoon when her car, a Peugeot 108, was destroyed by a powerful explosive device which blew the car into several pieces and threw the debris into a nearby field. Sounds like something was installed on the bottom of the car here. And obviously everybody who lost the tax sheltering in the Panama Papers had reason to be angry with her. So did the Clintons, who knew and did business with many of those people who were outed in this expose. So if the Clintons are tangled up in this mess, then the official conclusion will be that Daphne Galizia blew herself up in a fit of depression. She was just so depressed, she couldn't deal with it anymore, so she bombed her own car. All right, let's grab a phone call from Peter in Los Angeles. Aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Mike, I wanted to talk about what you're talking about right now, the whole thing with the Russiagate and trying to get Trump out and so on. And I think from the very beginning, as we all know, that Nixon was driven out of office for breaking into the Watergate office and basically undermining democracy and so on. But I would tell you that, in my opinion, and I've said this before, but this whole thing with Russiagate comes because Obama and Hillary weaponized the intelligence services. They spied, they surveilled, it's proven, they surveilled on Bernie Sanders, they surveilled the Trump campaign. And they did it without FISA court orders. They did it without anybody's permission. Of course, the intelligence agencies that went away violated their charter that went along with this, violated their charter, and so they have a huge stake in making sure it remains secret. But at any rate, if it comes out, of course, since that makes Watergate pale in comparison, they had to have something. And when Trump won, then they can go back and say, oh, well, we were surveilling. Yes, we were surveilling, but it was because the Russians were doing this. And it's a cover for the fact that they were, of course, weaponizing the intelligence services in the democratic process. I think that's what's going on. They can't let that out. Neither can the intelligence services. And Russia makes a really good whipping boy for both the military-industrial complex, the neocons, the intelligence services, and the left. So
yeah, that's what Russia is. Russia's the villain. Everything bad that's going on, it's Russia's fault. You know, Hillary's email, it's Russia's fault. Russia was hacking it. And it's getting tiresome in the extreme to see them going on about all this Russia bashing, and frankly, I'm just flat out sick of it. I'm tired of hearing this nonsense because we know it's nonsense. We know it is nonsense.
Well, Mike, if I fervently believe that's what's going on, but they cannot allow that to get out. That was going on. That their democratic process has been completely suborned. Not that most of the listeners here don't already know that, but that would jeopardize a whole lot of people, a whole lot of institutions, and they will ride this pony and suppress evidence and hide things like they have been doing until they get some sort of favorable outcome with the trying to get Trump out. So.
Yeah, well, you're absolutely in agreement. But again, like I said, if the full enormity of what they have been doing were to come on out, and we're talking about all the way back 30 years to Arkansas, when you have that government-sanctioned drug running going on, that would bring the whole government down. And that's why even some of Hillary's worst enemies, they're struggling to keep this story under control because they want to keep their jobs. They like their cushy, very highly paid government jobs. They get to order other people around, tell them what to do. And, we're looking at the dark heart of the narcocracy, the reality of what our government is, a crime organization. Peter, we have to let you go. We'll be right back. Aloha, America. Welcome back to the show. And as you know, Trump has issued a new revised travel ban. And once again, here in Hawaii, U.S. District Judge Derek Watson has issued a stay an order blocking most of the newest travel ban. The only countries that he said it's okay to impose the ban on are Venezuela and North Korea, who have lots of reasons not to like us. But apparently the state of Hawaii, along with a Honolulu mosque, its imam, and 2 state residents who've got family in the affected areas, are basically arguing, you can't do this, it's going to harm us. And they're saying that it's going to hurt Hawaii's state university system, which has students, professors, and visitors from the bloc countries. Well, they're already here. They're not going to be impacted by this thing. As well as the Hawaii tourism industry. Well, to be very honest, I've lived here for a lot of years. We don't get a lot of tourism from those countries on the ban list. Most of our tourism comes from Asia and the U.S. mainland. But less and less of that because nobody wants to get groped up by the TSA. So this is just plain liberal tit for tat. And it really is a lot of nonsense to see all these people trying to block the travel ban, knowing full well that the president has this authority, that previous presidents have used this authority without any kind of complication or backlash, and that any action that appears to support illegal immigrants or refugees is a Title VIII violation. And if I were Donald Trump, I'd be thinking seriously about escalating this up, ramping it up. Don't want him to lose his temper, because losing your temper is a bad thing when you're a president and you've got access to all those weapons. But this nonsense of open borders has gone on way too long. Way too long. All right, let's see. We're going to take a phone call. Steve in Massachusetts. Aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hi, Mike. I want to speak to you about revolution.
Okay.
I hear time and time again there's people calling your show saying we need to have a revolution.
Mm-hmm.
Mike, we're already in a revolution. What you're doing is you're relaying the information, exposing the people who are out there, and us people listening to your show, we're relaying to other people, and we're getting information from one person to another person to another person. And they say the first step to revolution is knowing who the culprits are and exposing them for what they really are. And that's what we're doing. And if you notice, more and more people are becoming more and more awake.
I have noticed that.
You take, for example, this latest false flag. I mean, it got ripped apart like you wouldn't believe by everyone out there. And people are not buying it anymore. People are not buying the fake news. People are not buying the politicians. People are not buying the fake flag, the false flags. You see people protesting about the football that speak out against the people. The revolution is happening now. This is the first step. But
well, I don't have a problem with this kind of a revolution. It's virtual. It's in cyberspace. My argument is with those who are calling up the show or sending me emails saying it's time for a violent revolution. And no, I do not agree that it is time for a violent revolution for two very practical reasons. The American people are waking up. They are not ready to fight a revolution. And the other side is, if there's one thing the U.S. government can actually do well, it's kill people. And they won't hesitate to kill 25% of the American population to ensure the remaining 75% remain loyal slaves.
No, we're not ready, but we're making huge strides. And I can totally see the difference from even a year ago, from where we were back then to where we are now. And I just want to thank you for what you're doing, and I appreciate it. I relay the information to everyone I know, and try to get my point across. Not only that, I tell my son a lot of things at school,
mm-hmm.
and the stuff that they're telling him, he tells me everything, and I tell him it's all propaganda. So he's telling me that when the teachers try to relay information of all the stuff that we've heard in the past, now he's telling me that kids are rolling their eyes, and then teachers are getting frustrated because they're not really getting the point across like they used to. That's another part of the revolution.
Yeah, we definitely have. Anyway, listen, I'm sorry to cut you off, Steve, but we got to take another commercial break. We'll be right back. And And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show. We're going to take a quick phone call here. Steve in Florida. Aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind? Steve in Florida, are you there?
Oh, there you go. I didn't hear you, Mike. Hey, Mike, got a question. I'm in Florida now, and I was at a Walmart, and I noticed that the Walmarts are going towards automation. So I talked to one of the workers there, the employees there, and he told me this in confidence. He said they were told within 1 to 1.5 years, all the Walmarts would be 100% automated, so there would be no more checker girls anymore to ring up your items. So I walked through, and I noticed they had 50 checkout lanes. Only 10 were manned by actual people. Everything else everybody was checking out scanning their own items and bagging up their own items. So I said to the guy, I said, you realize with this total automation, you are eliminating the need for you as an employee. And he said, he kind of looked at me puzzled, and he said, well, a few of us will be working. And I said, you're eliminating the need for you. And so the question is, understanding that he said this is a pattern that's going to be going on. Target's going to do it. Kmart's going to do it. But keeping in mind that employee wages is a big part of your cost of your product line, now that they eliminate the need for people, their biggest cost is wages, you think Walmart will bring their prices down to accommodate they're not having those wages anymore?
Well, it's not quite that clean and clear for two reasons. You're having to do with the fact that the initial purchase price of those automated self-checkout scanners has to be amortized over the life expectancy. There's going to be breakdowns, there's going to be maintenance, and you have to also figure in, as people realize they are not being watched at the checkout, how many of them are going to be like passing things just slightly off to one side of the scanner so it doesn't register at all. So I would expect that we're going to see Walmart's cost advantage in going total automation erode rapidly between the cost of the automation itself and the inevitable result that people who are at Walmart are desperate to get by on as little as money that they have, and they're going to be looking for ways to fool the security systems and walk out of Walmart with a couple of things that maybe they didn't actually pay for.
So you think it won't last? It probably won't last, huh?
It does seem like they're pushing in that direction, but there's something else Walmart needs to remember, and all these stores that are doing the automation, they're doing it at the local Home Depot, they're doing it at the local Sam's Club. Your employees collectively are also your customers collectively. And if you're putting them all out of work, just who do you think is going to be coming into your store to buy stuff?
Yeah. Well, that's exactly what I posed to him, and he said, well, they'll keep a few of us so we can monitor the checkouts, but I said, so they keep 10% and 90% are out. If you're lucky enough to be the 10%, I said, but if I don't understand why there's not more people seeing the big picture on this, that they're eliminating the need for themselves as an employee. And you're right. If everybody has no job, well, then who's going to be buying the products and services?
I mean, let's just do a reducto ad absurdum on this. I mean, we're heading to a situation where the future is going to have all these shopping malls with all these robots and machines standing around with absolutely nothing to do because there are no more customers.
Yep, that's it. Hey, thanks, Michael. Appreciate it.
All right, thanks an awful lot. We're going to let you go. And now it's time for our daily episode of As the Stomach Churns, which is the ongoing saga of Harvey Weinstein and what's going on in Hollywood. And a lot of people are saying, maybe it's a distraction. I don't think so. A liberal broke the story, tried to break it at NBC, and that's caused a bit of a problem. But more and more people coming on out and saying, yeah, there's a lot of this stuff going on. And right now, some of the really big stars, the ones who really don't care if they ever do a movie again or not, they're starting to come on out. And Robert Downey Jr. Came on out with this elite Hollywood pedophile ring. And Corey Feldman, of course, some years ago, tried to blow the whistle on this. And he was told, you shut up, can't talk about that. So Robert Downey Jr. Used to have a friend named Diana, and she's basically the Rosetta Stone of every scandal and perversion from Hollywood all over the globe. Actually, Downey says he knew somebody who knew this lady, Diana Jenkins, and she was sort of the Uber procurator, if you would. Sort of like the Hollywood Madam, but without so much public attention. And if you were running a party and you wanted high-class call girls and for Arabs, Wall Street, D.C. royal elites, this was the person that you went to. And she was the person with the connections to get all this stuff put together. All righty. Now then, more and more people are coming on out and saying, yeah, everybody knew. Larry King's wife, Shawn, was basically in Los Angeles on Friday night. They were leaving a restaurant, and some of the paparazzi were out there saying, did you know what Harvey was up to? And she said, well, it was very well known. Then she tried to back out of it and said, I don't personally know, of course. But if you've got that much smoke, there's a fire out there. Now, there's a writer, Scott Rosenberg, and he's worked with the Weinstein Company, Beautiful Girls, Con Air, High Fidelity, and he worked for them for about a decade, and he says, yeah, everybody effing knew. This wasn't really all that secret. Everybody knew what was going on, and everybody knew that if they talked about it, their career would evaporate. Now, last week, one of the stories that came on out was about how Harvey Weinstein basically accosted this TV anchor lady. Tried to kiss her, tried to grope her. She put him off. And then all of a sudden, he just unzips and he starts pleasuring himself. And apparently, when the former owner of this restaurant, Armin Amiri, was reached for comment by The Hollywood Reporter, he said Weinstein's lawyers had contacted him asking him to deny the incident ever happened. And Armin not only did not go along with it, he basically said the original story was mistaken in one aspect only. It wasn't a plant pot he used for his release. It was an actual cooking pot, which I wonder how everybody who had dinner in that restaurant after that night might have felt about that. And Hillary Clinton is out there screaming about, well, this is, white male privilege, like Donald Trump. She's trying to draw some kind of a connection between Donald Trump's reputation for being flirtatious with Harvey Weinstein's outright grab and rape. And, Trump was rich and handsome, unlike Weinstein. Trump doesn't need to attack women. Women are throwing themselves at him. There's a big difference there. But the real issue is that it's a much better alignment to contrast the active sexual predation of Harvey Weinstein with that of Hillary's husband, Bill Clinton, who has been accused of rape and various other assaults through the years. And Hillary gets all huffy about that and says, well, that's just so far in the past. You shouldn't talk about that anymore. Well, a lot of what's coming out about Weinstein happened in the past. But Hillary's out there with a double standard. She's trying to use Weinstein to tarnish Donald Trump. It's not sticking. It's flashing back onto Bill and the fact that Hillary herself ran the bimbo squad. That every time a woman came forward, Hillary and her people would just destroy her credibility, tarnish her in the media. And apparently that's how Harvey's lawyer is going to try and deal with the current situation. Oh, who are you going to believe? Me, a big, rich Hollywood mega producer, or that That bimbo over there, that actress. Just trying to use my name to become famous. Not really. Some of these people are well-known, bankable names. It's not like they need the publicity. All right, we're going to take a break from this story because the phone lines are loading up here. So real quick, we're going to talk to Sherry in Fredericksburg. Aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hi, Mike. I called about my cell phone dropping calls and why I think all this stuff is happening, but I also have something to say about what you're talking about right now.
Yep.
I worked in L.A. for 6 years, really, and the big names that weren't talked about is Bill Cosby.
Yes.
And he came up later, and Arthur Godfrey before him. But it was my understanding, and this is kind of work, because I had a friend that wrote for Photoplay, and she had her own column, and so she was always looking for news. And it was like what went around the business, what went on in the business stayed in the business. You've talked about this before because of this code of ethics. They're kind of like cops. We're all out just
it's not
to
a
keep our
code of
job.
ethics. It's not a code of ethics. It's box office. These scandals come on out.
Okay.
You know, people start staying at home. They don't go to the theaters. They don't buy the DVDs. They don't rent the downloadable form. Look what's happening with the NFL. I mean, even though that thing is all dying down, their audience, those stadiums are now empty. And the same thing happens to Hollywood when one of these scandals breaks.
Yeah, this is the thing. This is why it's such a big deal that this guy's being brought down, because this is a big change in direction, and it's never been like this before. And so it's kind of a really big deal when you look back in hindsight from back in the 60s when I was there. It's like you don't talk about it outside of the business, but boy, we all sure talked about it in the business, you know.
Yes,
this
we
is
did.
neat that it's now dragged out to the open. What I want to say about cell phones, I'm dropping these calls.
I want to stop right here. Stop right here. Just give me a second because I want to respond to what you just said.
Okay.
This is not a unique moment. Okay, there have been scandals in Hollywood before that came on out. And they get talked about, and of course the media's job is to tamp them down and let them fade into history and never bring them up again. The David Begelman scandal is a good one. The Hollywood Madam scandal was a good one. I mean, this goes all the way back to Fatty Arbuckle, that these things are happening, and they're all bad for the box office. And everybody who either works for the industry or has invested in the industry, they want these stories to go away.
Yeah, the Madam, really, they never did publish her little book, though. But I know about Arbuckle. You're right about that one, and I'm not sure who the other guy is, but it seems like that to me. Because before it was like, you know, we talked about this stuff, but we just wouldn't, you know, it would never show up in any publications for sure. But this is, you're right, it's not 100%, but it feels like a big deal to me. And I'm happy for it. As a dancer, though, if you can't do the work, they don't want you. And if you get to know the choreographers and you do a really good job, they send you telegrams. We want you in our show. You know.
Yes.
This is the nice thing about having been a dancer. But anyway, my cell phone. I think that many government monopolies these days are running on scams. You know, I've had these cell phone things dropped, and I think it makes me have to call back and use more minutes, because I only use my cell phone for long distance or if I need it in town, and that's it. And I was noticing something on the Walmart thing. But anyway, I think that there's we have to deal with these problems.
Can we slow down here a little bit, because you're going from subject to subject and not giving me a chance to respond here. Part of the problem with the cell phones is that the newer, more advanced cell phones, they've got software problems right out of the box. Apple has just released iOS 11.0.3, which we installed over the weekend. Still has not cleared the problem I have with the email badge. But what's really going on is that the cell phone providers, they're trying to maximize the profit from their existing cell systems. And even though more and more people are buying cell phones, the companies aren't adding bandwidth to those towers. And so what's going on is you're having difficulty connecting with a nearby tower for a clear signal. It will go on out and try and connect you with another tower that may be further away where you're not going to get a good signal. And here in my home, we don't have good cell phone coverage. And this is probably a big part of why yesterday when I was trying to reach John Stadmiller about our internet being down, we just had so much trouble. Everyone's cutting corners way too much. There's no resiliency or margin for error in the system, and it does feel like the entire infrastructure, technology of the United States is starting to fall apart. All right, now back to Walmart.
Yeah, well, scam sensitivity may be on my part. I'm super sensitive to this because it just seems like it's everywhere these days. But on the Walmart thing, I noticed something the other day, and I ran and got my statement here, and under because I write checks for everything or cash. When I shop from the local company, that's a state-run company, the one that gives their extra food to the food pantries and stuff, it says under description, it calls it check payment, which is what it is, and it gives it a number. The Walmart, I might go to this Walmart I went to Walmart the same week, and I bought groceries with this, I think. Yes, well, it doesn't matter what I buy at Walmart. They're going to call it purchase.
Okay, we're almost out of time. You need to sum up,
yeah.
please.
Here's the summary. A purchase means that you have to use your cell phone or a card to make that purchase if it's groceries or anything you buy in the store. Whereby this local grocery store, you can write a check and they're not going to question it or put it through to the tower or make a big deal out of it. They have been trying to get me to use their automated thing because they're going to have that store-wide, I think, since the name's different, the description's different from check payment for one store and purchase for another means they could use that.
All right. Well, let me
method of operation for everything in their store.
Let me step in here. First of all, I won't use the automated checkout, and I won't do business with any establishment that will refuse cash. Period. End of discussion.
Right.
We all need to take a hard line.
End of discussion.
Sherry, we got to let you go. Take a break for commercials.
Thanks.
Aloha, America. Welcome back to the show here. We're going to get some more phone calls out of the way and then get on back to the news here. Veronica in Iowa. Aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind today?
Hi, Michael. I did 8 years in a Walmart.
You have my deepest sympathy.
Operate. Oh, thank you. It was a horror. At least I can still talk in complete sentences.
Ah, good.
I know a lot of people that can't. But I'm very well acquainted with how Walmart operates, and I know several assistant managers, many who have left because they just refuse to treat the associates in the way that Walmart demands. My nephew was also an assistant manager there. He had an opportunity to leave, which he took up on, and went to, I'm almost scared to say the name of his employer. It's a large warehouse type situation where all the vendors' supplies are sent to, and then the vendors come there and pick up what they need and deliver to all the Walmarts.
Okay.
And Walmart announced to this company that they were no longer going to be needing their services, that they were going to have their associates do the stocking now. And, of course, this place employs thousands. They have a very good wage. They have exceptional benefits. And my nephew was just panic-stricken. He's like, I'm going to lose my job. So they negotiated with Walmart, and Walmart said, well, here's our demands. Keebler, Nabisco, and I'm lost for who else has already been eliminated. But they made their demands to this company on how they will be running their business from now on. They will be having only part-time people.
Yes.
The wages will be this amount. This is what you will do. The mistake that people make with Walmart is they put all their eggs in the Walmart basket.
Mm-hmm.
And then when that basket drops, they're left with a horror story.
Well, that's true. That's true with
their third shift.
That's true with a lot of places of business right now. I mean, over the last couple of decades, we have seen the working class America, just crushed down to bare survival. And for anybody who's losing their job right now, it's going to be a disaster. because there are no more jobs out there. We have 100 million legal American citizens willing and able to work who have not been able to find work for months, if not years. And this rush to automation, it's almost a repeat of the offshoring. This was back about early 2000s, where the trend was offshoring. We're going to send our manufacturing or our call center off to some other country where the labor there is really, really cheap. Huzzah, huzzah, huzzah. And the first few companies that did it started showing higher profits. Okay, Veronica, I'm going to have to put you on hold here. Do not hang up. We'll be right back after station identification. And aloha, America. Welcome back to the show here. We're talking with Veronica, and we're talking about this push toward automation to make the bottom line at brick-and-mortar retailers look a lot better. I think it's going to backfire horribly for the same reason that the offshoring craze backfired. Where the first few companies that started, shutting down their own domestic manufacturing and ordering from overseas started showing a high profit, and so everybody said, "Oh, we're going to do this. We're going to do this." And then the problem was that all of these working class people were out of work, and they couldn't buy the products that were being sold, no matter how inexpensive they were. And it was really the beginning of the retail Mageddon we are still seeing to this very day. And it seems like they haven't learned from their mistakes, and we're not getting sound guidance from the federal government on this, but it's a repeat of the same disaster. They're going to be firing people, putting in robots and scanners and all the rest of it, and they're going to stand around scratching their head wondering why nobody's coming into their stores anymore.
You hit the nail on the head with theft. I was the maintenance manager there. That's what I did. So I was all around in the store all day long. I wasn't in one spot. I saw a lot. And people do. They'll just kind of cover up that UPC code and just kind of slip that on past. But they don't, at this point in time at least, they really aren't interested in customer theft so much as they want to catch those employees.
Well,
and I had caught a repeat offender in their regulations in regard to how to handle customer theft are idiotic. They let this woman go. I was livid, and I was written up for my bad attitude. So there you go. So I told them, I said, I will never help you with anything on this regard again. And I didn't. I just call it Healthy Selfie Store.
Okay.
It's nuts. So.
All right. Well, Veronica, the phone lines are loading up, and we're going to let you go here. Thank you very much for the phone call. And by the way, folks, I'm already getting flooded with emails about, oh, yes, I worked at Walmart. They're a terrible place. And, yeah, we already know that. And I want to get back onto the main focus here. It looks like Wally in, I guess that's Nebraska? New Brunswick. Okay, Wally in New Brunswick. I guess you want to talk about automated checkouts, too.
Yeah, just you're talking about the theft on these things. Each machine has its own bagging platform. Those bagging platforms are scales.
Okay.
I went through one. I picked up those little bags of spices. They weigh less than an ounce. And I didn't realize it, but I had two bags stuck together. So I only scanned one, threw it into the bag on the platform. The machine had a hissy fit.
Ah, well, okay. That's good for us to know.
And okay, on the cash part, I went into one of those stores where they had some of those checkouts, and the cash part of the machine, I guess, must have been back in their server because it was down on all of the machines. All of the machines only take debit or credit. Normally, in that store, the machines, there's a lineup. Without the cash, no lineup.
Well, again, they're making the systems more and more complicated, which makes them more prone to failure. I remember a couple of weeks ago at our local Safeway, And Claire and I are always commenting, everybody's using credit cards or EBT cards or whatever it is. That system broke down in the Safeway, and they couldn't take credit, debit, or EBT. And everybody's standing around just furious because they wanted to get their groceries and go home and feed their kids. And Claire and I walked through the checkout line, paid cash, and we're out of there. And it's this cashless society is not for our benefit. It's for the benefit of our masters, the bankers. And I think we should oppose it. And we should actively oppose the automation of the retail shopping space with the knowledge that every one of those automated scanning platforms represents a human losing a job.
Exactly. Yeah. There's no doubt about it. And sometimes it's two humans because some of the stores still have bag boys.
Well, at our store, I think they just have a staff at the checkout, and if they're not checking out a lot of people, the other cashiers do the bag boy service. So that's how that works there.
But I know.
Okay.
Yeah, some of them do that around here too, but the smaller ones do it the old-fashioned way. They're the ones that
I love the smaller markets here. Anyway, Wally, we're going to let you go. I want to clear up these phone lines and get on back to the news. Okay. So let's see. I guess our next caller is, well, first of all, we're going to do a shout-out to our on-air affiliates who are rejoining our network, and we're going to go to James in Atlanta. Aloha, James. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind today?
Mike, I wanted to ask you about Harvey Weinstein. Whenever people go to court or what's going to happen, doesn't it seem strange that he was having these meetings in hotel rooms and wearing these robes? That's not normally how things work in the corporate world. Don't you normally meet in a meeting room?
Well, the difference there is that if you're a producer and you're on location, there really isn't much in the way of a meeting room. And yeah, it can get really personal. But, a lot of these people were very nervous about meeting with him in the hotel room. And I don't think they were prepared to just walk on in and see this guy nearly naked. Again, the real issue is the power trip on Harvey's part. Because, again, you don't really need to force yourself on women in Hollywood. There's a lot of women who are just giving it away to try and work their way up the ladder. So it's all about the power. It's about Weinstein getting to do a famous actress that would normally say no to somebody. And that, I think, is what was getting him off. But it's disgusting behavior. There's no question about it.
Do you know what happened to that mayor? A couple of weeks before Weinstein, there was some mayor, I think it was maybe in Seattle, that had a bunch of people filing charges against him that I've never heard anything more about it.
I think he stepped down. Stepped down. The difference here with the Weinstein case is it is entertainment. And we are conditioned to just focus on the entertainment industry. When you go out that supermarket checkout line, look at the magazine rack. You're not going to find, quality reading there. It's all the gossip magazines and who's doing who, and, it's just amazing. And so everybody sort of feels like they're sharing those lives. There's a false illusion of closeness with the celebrities, and that's why people are going to respond to the story.
Do you think it's fair to say, though, the Inquirer is more real news compared to all these other people? They try to get their facts straight, don't they?
Well, they did after they got sued by, I think it was Carol Burnett. National Enquirer used to be just as reckless as the other tabloids, and they got sued. Lost badly, and after that they changed their editorial policy and said, no matter how we sensationalize the facts, let's have the facts correct so we can't be dragged into court. Okay?
Well, it's a mess. Thanks, Mike, and I hope you have a great day.
All right, thanks an awful lot. We're going to switch over to Milton in Pennsylvania. Aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Yes, aloha, Michael. I watched a video last night, and it was pertaining to gun confiscation. And the man that I listened to, like scares the heck out of me, because he said if they do away with firearms, they won't have to do a house-to-house confiscation, because he says they know there would be too many dead bodies to pick up. What they would do is label us domestic terrorists, take all our assets, freeze your bank account, take any of your merchandise you own. What do you say?
I say that would probably get those gun owners out on the street loaded for bear.
Yeah, I'm thinking that myself, because, I didn't know that it would be that easy. I never thought of that side of the coin,
Well, right now the American public is very angry. They're frustrated. They know that the government has gone rogue. They know that our elections are rigged, and it was only by dint of Herculean effort that we were able to overcome the election fraud in last year's general election and keep Hillary from that White House. So the American people are very angry, and for the tacticians, if you will, who are trying to plan how to move the nation along the war agenda, they're having to deal with, or they should hopefully be dealing with, the reality that they could push the American people across a line. I don't want to see that happen. What I want to see happen is for the federal government to collapse the way the Soviet Union did.
Okay. All right, Mike, I just, that was something maybe somebody else didn't know, because I sure as heck didn't,
Oh, yeah, if your money is in a bank, the government can just seize it with the push of a button.
Yeah. There's a lot to think about. Okay.
Yes.
Okay, my friend.
All right, thanks.
Thank you for the education.
All right, thanks an awful lot. We're going to switch over to George in Hawaii. And aloha, welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hi, Mike. Aloha. Listen, if it was done internationally, they'd call it sanctions. But the same thing can be done here. They can freeze your bank accounts, close you down, and literally dehumanize you. Probably not the right word, but they can make you a non-person very quickly.
Well, the Soviet Union used to do that.
Yes, absolutely. Non-person. But the reason I'm calling in response to that lady with the big box store.
Yes.
I went to a big box operation here in Honolulu. You know it. Probably go to the same one. I got in there and I picked up a bottle of wine. And I don't even drink, but I just thought I'd buy a bottle of wine. I get to the clerk, and she wants to see a photo ID. I'm 70 years old.
Yes.
And I'm wondering, well, I certainly don't have to prove my age. And I asked her, what do you want? She said, well, maybe a driver's license. I said, but I'm not driving, and you have no authority to look at my driver's license. You're not a police officer, and I'm not driving, so I don't know why you would need me to ID myself. And then I went on to tell her that there is no better person to ID me than me. I am the living person. I am the human being. I don't need a piece of plastic.
Okay, well, it's not the clerk's fault, because this is happening all over the state, and apparently the alcohol control folks got it into their head that ID must be presented at all times. And again, getting on back to Safeway, even though all those cashiers know who I am, okay, they're not asking to see my ID, but every time we check on out with a bottle of wine or something, they say, when is your birthday? And I'll say August 29th, 1952, and they'll literally type it into the record in that cash register. And so this is something that's another rather pointless, ridiculous law, because, like you, I mean, I'm an old guy. I'm 65. I got gray hair, wrinkles, the whole thing. How can they possibly think I'm an underage drinker? It's nonsense. It's
my gripe.
Some politician.
I'm not doing.
Go ahead.
Mike, I'm not doing a straw purchase. I'm not buying for a minor. I'm not buying alcohol for somebody in prison or somebody who cannot possess it legally. I'm buying it for me. Okay? I know who I am. And I understand that the clerk is a $7 an hour clerk. But I told her to put the bottle back, because I will not give anybody more information than they need.
Mm-hmm.
And this is a rule of thumb. this I know from personal experience, never give the police or authorities more power than they need to do their job.
I
If
agree.
you empower them, anybody, never, ever give them more power. That is the classic failure of society, empowering the police. There was a man named, I can't think of his name right now, but he was the father of modern policing from England. You know his name, Robert something, or Robert Peel, Sir
Yes.
Robert Peel. He once said that everybody is a police officer. Just some of us get paid for doing the job. So that's the way I feel. Everybody is a police officer. I don't need to be telling people about who I am and what I'm doing and everything else. I'm a very private person. But that being said, I want to thank you, Mike. I listen to your show all the time, and nice weather. Enjoy it.
Yes. Well, it was kind of windy over the weekend, and we dodged a couple of thunderstorms. It's Hawaii. And by the way, somebody just wrote in to tell me the same thing as in Texas. Everybody buying alcohol. Everybody. Even if they're 80 years old on a walker, they're going to have to show their ID. And again, it's just some politicians passing.
I will not do that.
It's just politicians passing completely pointless and useless laws so that they can say, I campaign for stronger restrictions on alcohol. And I can't think of any other reason for that. I mean, if you're talking about a kid...
Well, Mike.
Yeah.
Alcohol is a controlled substance. There's no question. It's a highly controlled substance. People in prison can't possess it. Minors can't possess it. You can't drink it in public. There are only certain ways that you can't sell it without a license. So I understand that there are a lot of regulations on alcohol. I live with that every day. No problem. I don't even drink. But when I'm told that I got to present a picture ID to buy a bottle of wine, I get a little tense, Mike. Trust me. Get a little tense over that. I didn't buy the wine, and I'm not gonna. I won't do it. I just won't do it anymore, ever.
Well, yeah, you know, you don't need to do it if you take up winemaking as a hobby. It's not that hard to do. You have to have some. No, seriously, you have to have some floor space for it. The minister who married Claire and I was a winemaker in his spare time. And he used to make up his own mead. And you can't sell it without the tax stamp.
That sounds good.
But you can give it away as gifts, and he did. You know, and...
So, Mike, I would be the little old winemaker from Hawaii Kai.
Yes, you would be the
Wouldn't
little
that be
old
wonderful?
winemaker. And, you know, it brings back memories. When I was a kid, my grandfather, the one who was drinking buddies with Richard Nixon, he had a personal still. And back there, it was legal to have a still for personal consumption. You just couldn't sell it without the tax stamp. And it was a little tiny thing. It was just for making, a little jug of sipping liquor. And it was hidden in the woods out back of his hunting cabin in the White Mountains. And he showed it to me one time and how it all worked. So
well, my grandfather, great-grandfather in Honolulu, did the same thing. He was making his own little wine, his own stash.
Yep.
And he also bottled his own root beer. And they bottled things for the holiday season, and that was what they did, and it was part of the culture. And totally understand. It's a European thing.
It's not just here in Hawaii. Again, when I was a kid growing up in New Hampshire, we used to make and bottle our own root beer. It was fun. It was fun to do that. It really was. All right, listen, I got to let you go. We've wandered way down nostalgia, and I'm way behind on my talking points. So let's grab one more phone call from Mark in North Carolina, and then we're going to go back and catch up on the news here. Mark, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hey, how you doing there, Mike? I haven't called you in a while. I've been doing something else with it. My work hours changed a little bit, but I'm wondering. But what's going on here in Vegas? It's obvious to me that Sheriff Lombardo is being threatened by that agent Rouse. He's really a ruse. Like in another show, he's a ruse.
Yes,
Agent Ruse. And I'm thinking to myself this. First of all, this is the same sheriff that Mr. Bundy told to arrest those federal BLM jerks in Nevada a few years ago. Okay, and he didn't do it. And I don't know if these sheriffs understand. The sheriff is the only true law enforcement officer, at least, agency in the country, because they're elected directly by the people.
Yes.
and only the people can get rid of them. It's not another politician. And he has the power. On top of that, a sheriff has the power to deputize as many people in the county as he can.
Mark, I'm sorry to cut you off. We got to take a break for commercials. We'll be right back.
Can we continue the next part?
No, I'm kind of tired of Las Vegas. Thank you for the phone call. And aloha, America. Welcome back to the show here. And stepping back to that first commercial presentation about the need for donations to support all of our work out here. The phone number at Republic Broadcasting where you can call, grab a pencil. There will be a quiz next period. The phone number is 800-724-2719, extension 3. Now, the postal address, and by the way, all of this is at the republicbroadcasting.org website. The address is RBN 2251 Double Creek Drive. That's in Round Rock, Texas, 78664. And we are in a war. And the money junkies are at war with everybody else. Because as much as they've got, they don't feel that we should be allowed to have the little bit that we still have. They want it all. They're convinced that whatever imaginary playmate they think lives up there in the sky wants them to have all of the wealth of the world. And they're acting to make that a reality. And that's why we're all standing up to oppose them. And as John said in the break, it is at great risk. And that's just a reality we all have to live with and accept. All right, moving on to some lighter things here. You know, I'm seeing a real problem out there between these laws saying that you have to show a photo ID to buy alcohol, colliding with these automated teller machines. Rather, automated checkout machines. How are you going to have to show them the ID? Is it going to scan it and read it to make sure that you can, in fact, buy the alcohol legally? And if so, are they going to be saving those scans of your driver's license, state IDs? And if they are doing that, does that run the risk of hackers breaking on in and stealing all those images of driver's license for nefarious purposes? So, now, we're getting on back to Harvey Weinstein. It's not going to go away, and we don't want it to go away. And I think one of the reasons why so many people are stepping forward about this right now is when you know that there has been a wrong committed and you're unable to do anything about it, you start getting very resentful. You can build up a huge rage. And at some point, it needs to come on out here. Now, the Clinton Foundation has now announced they will not return all the hundreds of thousands of dollars in donations from Harvey Weinstein, saying they've already spent the money on charitable purposes. We don't have it to give back to him. If we did, we would, because he's a real slime ball. But we just don't have it. We're going to keep it. And another article, this is was on Yahoo already, and I knew this was going to happen. Is chasing Harvey Weinstein an anti-Semitism of the right? So they're playing the anti-Semite card, and it's a ridiculous question to ask because, in point of fact, the reporter who broke the story is a liberal. So Reese Witherspoon has come forward to say she was assaulted by a director when she was 16, just starting in the industry. Won't name him. I guess she wants to hang on to her career. But it is coming on out. Now, over at NBC, Noah Oppenheimer is under pressure to either apologize or resign for spiking those Weinstein exposés and forcing the reporter to take them over to the New York Times. It was a bad call. and it makes NBC look like they're covering up for the rich and famous, which they are. But there's now pressure for him to step on down, or at least apologize, to keep his job. We'll be right back. Aloha, America. Welcome back to the show here. And as I mentioned earlier in the program, a very worrying sign for me is that Hillary Clinton is out there trying to attract attention, trying to place herself in the public eye as much as she can. She's out there in this global book signing tour. And all of a sudden, she's had to cancel a series of these book signings. Now, she was supposed to be on the BBC Women's Hour, ITV's This Morning show, and at the London studios. They're claiming that she's exhausted from her book tour, and she fell over and hurt her toe. Well, we know about Hillary Clinton and falling over, but it may have been that maybe she's just a little tired of the openly hostile reaction she's getting. I saw a video of a book signing in London. Hillary gets out of the car, the crowd starts booing. Now, let's get on over to the war zones here. Lots going on here. Basically, story coming out of Russia today, the Russian Foreign Ministry has condemned Donald Trump's refusal to adhere to the 2015 nuclear agreement with Iran, saying the move poses a threat to international security and nuclear nonproliferation, and, point I've been making all along, exposes the U.S. as an unreliable partner who can break agreements at any time. And that is really the price our nation is paying for its obedience to Israel. Because the U.S. government is rapidly gaining a reputation of complete untrustworthiness. Germany is out there. The German Foreign Minister, Sigmar Gabriel, is saying that if the U.S. pulls out of the Iran nuclear deal, it could be a trigger for World War III. Macron says he warned Trump not to scrap the Iran deal. All of the other signers of the P5+1 are saying, we like the deal as is. We're going to continue to abide by it. The question is, what is Iran going to do? Now, Donald Trump's entire rationale for refusing to recertify the Iran deal, Iran has kept compliance with every requirement. The IAEA has confirmed it. Basically, Trump and his associates just came up with this laughable idea that Iran has violated the spirit of the agreement by refusing to allow the United States to add more conditions to it, even in the face of the fact that the United States has violated the spirit of the deal by adding more sanctions, even though Iran is in compliance. So Russia is rejecting this U.S. idea for fixing the Iran nuclear deal. They're saying it works just fine. But what Trump is being told to be worried about is Iran's missile production. And right now, the commander of the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, Aerospace Force Brigadier General Amir Ali Hajizadeh, basically blasted Trump's anti-Iran rhetoric and said Tehran will not stop boosting its missile capabilities under any circumstances. Even if a wall is constructed all around the country, the production of missiles will not be halted because this is a completely indigenous and domestic industry. What he's saying is that there is nothing that can be sanctioned or blockaded or embargoed that is going to affect their weapons development because they're developing it all inside their country. And they're out there saying the same thing that North Korea is. We have to have a means to discourage the U.S. from coming in and pillaging and plundering us, because that's what's been going on in all these countries. Libya, Afghanistan, Iraq, Yemen, Syria. Speaking of Syria, apparently the Turkish-backed groups in northern Syria are now fighting amongst themselves. So that's descending into chaos up there. Meanwhile, over in Europe, there's been a massive demonstration of support by Syrians living in Europe. Support for the army, support for the Russian Air Force, and all that they're doing to bring this war to an end, and it is coming to an end. Now, Jamal Wakim, he's an international relations professor of the Lebanese University, said that all of this news about how all of a sudden the U.S. is going on in and they're finishing off ISIS here and there, says that's not what's going on. He says the U.S. is bombing Syrian cities already liberated from ISIS by the Syrian government forces in order to obstruct those pro-Assad forces. It's a scorched earth policy. Now then. Interestingly enough, Vladimir Putin seems to be held in high regard around the world. There's pro-Putin graffiti appearing in Catalonia, Barcelona, Paris, Berlin, Syria, throughout the entire third world. Now, the Iraq forces have rolled into Kurdish Kirkuk. The Kurds did not put up a major fight. They just sort of stood there and watched it all happen. But again, this is all a violation of the United Nations Universal Declaration of Human Rights. Now, there's been a terror bombing down in Somalia's capital, Mogadishu. It's left more than 230 dead, hundreds more injured. And what was really interesting about this article that was over in circa.com was this comment about how this may require the U.S. To increase its involvement in Somalia. Now, we've been there before. Ever see Black Hawk Down? Didn't do all that well back then. Don't think we'll do all that much better now. Another story coming on out. Global Research up in Canada. U.S. regime change in Venezuela. The truth is easy if you follow the money trail. The opposition is pro-Washington, not pro-democracy. And it's another reminder that every single country that the U.S. has changed the government on, under the pretext of bringing them democracy, they don't get it. They get a dictatorship propped up by illusions of democracy, like we almost got with Hillary Clinton last November. Now, the joint U.S. and South Korean Navy drills have kicked off around the Korean Peninsula. Right now, Kim Jong-un is keeping his cool. Hasn't tested a nuclear weapon, hasn't launched a missile. We're almost 2 weeks in of the corporate media saying, he's going to do it, he's going to do it, he's going to do it. No, he's sitting back. Now, North Korea is out there saying that one mistake and we're going to have a nuclear war. But they don't want to be the ones to start it. Meanwhile, the U.S., for some reason, has announced that they're sending a special forces decapitation team to South Korea to be ready to move into North Korea should the need arise, like a convenient false flag attack. All right. Meanwhile, North Korea, since they're taking all the heat for supposedly partnering with Iran, which both North Korea and Iran have denied, but I guess the thinking is, look, if they're going to treat us like that anyway, maybe we should align. And North Korea has extended an invitation to Iran to struggle together against the United States' unfair steps. I think that would be a really, really good thing to get done. Apparently, I'm not sure about that one. Okay, here's a bit of an embarrassment. As you know, a while back, Israel uncorked on a Syrian anti-air battery, claiming that Syria had shot at them but had not hit anything. And then they returned home. And then there was this weird story that appeared a couple of days later about how one of Israel's F-35s had suffered a massive bird strike which rendered the plane unflyable. No photos were provided. Well, now Syria's come on out and said that their radar data is showing that the Syrian Defense Forces used an S-200 missile against the F-35. And the S-200 is the most advanced long-range anti-aircraft system operated by the Syrian military. But it's old-fashioned. It goes back to the Soviet era. And so here you have a stunning embarrassment where the U.S. latest state-of-the-art jet, the F-35, gets shot down by a Soviet-era missile. Now, Al Jazeera has started broadcasting the multiple episode expose of the Israel lobby's influence over Great Britain. And, of course, Israel supporters are out there saying you're anti-Semites, you're this, you're that. But the show passed official muster as being fair, balanced, and honest as to what was going on. And it's made public some serious allegations about just how Israel is interfering in Britain's internal affairs, to the point where Corbyn is now saying there needs to be a probe into all this Israeli interference. So he's called for an inquiry into the activities of an Israeli embassy officer who was caught on tape in an Al Jazeera investigation discussing a plot to, quote, take down, end quote, British politicians. And he's out there saying it's clearly a national security issue. And he's absolutely right. And we have the exact same problem here in the United States. And based on the success of their British show, Al Jazeera is now planning a new one for here in the United States. Because, yeah, it's a national security issue when our government is being controlled by a foreign power. And we have every right to be concerned. There's nothing in the Constitution about us being ruled from afar. In fact, the whole point of the American Revolution was rejection of the idea we're going to be ruled from another country. And I'm sure AIPAC's going to fight this tooth and nail. But if Al Jazeera is listening to this, let's see. I'm trying to remember the lady, Cynthia McKinney. Got to talk to Cynthia McKinney. She has felt the wrath of the Israeli lobby in this country. Meanwhile, Israel has advanced another 1,292 settlement homes. They're already planning hundreds more. Each and every one of these is a violation of international law. And Israel's attitude is, if you don't let us do what we want, you're an anti-Semite Jew hater who wants Hitler to come back and gas the Jewish babies in the ovens, blah, 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 blah. Now, interestingly enough, Iraq has called for setting up a joint Tehran-Baghdad bank to increase financial and economic exchanges between the two neighboring states. What a long way they've come since the U.S.-sponsored Iraq-Iran war. And I can see exactly what's happening here. By having direct trade can't be sanctioned, can't be interfered with. More importantly, they're not going to be going through the U.S. dollar. See, along with making a hefty profit off of other countries using the U.S. dollar, the U.S. government used it to exert control. We will decide what you will buy and sell. We'll punish you if you don't do what we tell you to do. And these other nations are straining at that bridle. And that's why they're setting up direct financial actions that don't go through the U.S. dollar, don't go through SWIFT, don't go through U.S. control. Basically, they're pulling the U.S. government's sanctions teeth one at a time. And it sends another signal that Baghdad is not all that happy with the continued American presence in their country. It does feel like the rest of the world has just reached the point of being totally fed up with the U.S. government. Now, apparently over in Great Britain, they're trying out the concept of a universal credit system. And apparently a benefits case worker has blown the whistle in the Independent, saying that in point of fact, this universal credit system is so underfunded, they're turning away people who are living in abject poverty, who have children to feed and can't feed them. So it's a program that looks good in the media. It makes it look like the government's trying to deal with the mass poverty and hunger, but they're not actually doing it. It's all for show. Just like all these government agencies we have that are held aloft as looking out for our best interests, like the Securities Exchange Commission, and then we find out they were giving Bernie Madoff a free pass. Minerals Management Service, supposed to be looking after our energy infrastructure. Then we find out they ignored the fact Deepwater Horizon was 4 years overdue for required maintenance on their manual blowout preventer. You have to start thinking, how much of the government is really of benefit to you versus how much of it is just set decoration to make it look like the government is taking care of you. How much of it is illusion? And as I said before, government is the most expensive thing you will ever pay for in your life. Are you getting value for money? You need to ask that question right now. Because I think for the vast majority of the American people, the answer would be no. The government is cutting back on all the things we, the American people, need and want in order to give more to the war machine, to Israel, to refugees, to illegal immigrants. It seems like we, the American people, have fallen very far down the ladder of priorities. And I think it's time for that to stop. Okay, we'll be back here after these commercials. And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show here, coming up on the top of the hour. Over in Europe, European Union, the debate about at least getting started on Brexit is continuing. And Brussels is still insisting that for anything to happen, Great Britain has to pay what amounts to a divorce payment. In other words, Brussels is saying to Great Britain that forget about what's in the actual European Union Charter, you will have to buy your freedom from Massa. And Britain came back with a very good observation, dating back to the last World War, about how much Britain sacrificed to help pull all of those member nations of the European Union away from the Nazis. And so Juncker is out there saying, well, thanks for saving us in the war, really, but you must pay. This isn't revenge, but if you want your freedom, you're going to have to pay for it. There are some days when Juncker just does not make any sense. Now, there's another story. This one came out of The Sun, reporting on how the BBC's hissy fit over the Brexit bias research proves it has something to hide. And basically what it was is somebody dug into what was BBC actually doing during the Brexit debate. And apparently BBC spent something like £19,000 on entertaining dozens of Remain politicians. The vast majority of those who were treated to free drinks and a night at the Royal Albert Hall were vocal defenders of the EU and prominent critics of Brexit. And basically hardly anybody else was allowed in. So yeah, BBC was caught on the license holders tab, palling around with the Remainers. Of course, BBC is liberal, and liberals are fully on board with this global government, one world government. It will be wonderful. And yes, we can see in nations that become too large and unmanageable, life is really, really terrible. But trust us, it'll magically work when it's a single global government. No, it won't. It will be history's greatest tyranny and dictatorship. Merely to survive the circumstances of its own creation because of all the lies that have been used to sell the global government. The refugee problem. Now, the globalists are having a little bit more upset because Austria just had their election, and Eurosceptic Sebastian Kurz won. And this could see him form an alliance with the far right in a crushing blow to the EU. Mr. Kurz's party is tough on immigration and widely Eurosceptic after rebranding itself over the last few months to propel its popularity. So the people are fighting back. They're pushing back. We'll be right back. And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show here, and we're going to go right to the telephones. Chris in Las Vegas. Aloha, Chris. Welcome back to the show. What's on your mind?
Well, thank you so very, very much, Michael. We have some more very curious and quirky occurrences here in this Las Vegas area, Henderson to be exact, this particular time. But it seems to have some associations with ancillary events related to the Mandalay Bay and other multiple shooting locations that occurred here on October the 1st. And it appears that the FBI was in the process of moving some secret witness. Based upon what I know, I suspect it was the individual who was being kept in room in the 47th floor of the Mandalay, one of their ancillary buildings, that was under the name, the false name of Bob Smith. And since the FBI has taken over the proprietary and exclusive investigatory role, supposedly the Federal Bureau of Invention of false stories, as they have habitually and serially done in the past, to create false illusions of who was actually behind the thing, when it seems there's a strong indication that people with the dark state were actually the perpetrators of this event.
Okay, you're kind of wandering all over and rambling on about all this stuff. What is the point you're trying to make here?
Well, there was a event in Henderson, Nevada, it was either yesterday or the day before, where there were 3 people killed, and it appears to be the taking out of a secret witness that was being moved undercover by the FBI in a caravan attack, which is very, very unusual. Okay. But because the FBI is watchful over the investigation, there's a virtual vacuum of information getting out on it, other than just the sparse amount on the truth venues on the internet.
Okay, well, I mean, this sounds like apples and oranges. I have a much more primary question. Why is the FBI involved in the Mandalay Bay shooting? The crime did not occur across state lines. Technically, the FBI doesn't have jurisdiction.
I totally agree with your perceptions there. However, apparently due to a high amount of stress by Sheriff Joseph P. Lombardo, and apparently some displays of emotion and anxiety on the videos at the press conferences, he has abdicated the responsibility and turned it over exclusively, taking a much smaller role and leaving the primary investigatory role to the FBI. And I suppose you might claim there might be international terrorism. We know that there's investment fraud, insider trading by George Soros, Michael Chertoff.
Yeah, but I think it's the other way around. I think the FBI came on in and said we're taking over, and that the sheriff didn't feel like he was going to exert the reality that the FBI isn't supposed to be there. Look, we know that there's a lot of weird stuff that's going on about Las Vegas. We're going to get to some of that a little bit further in the show. But thank you for the phone call, Chris. We're going to let you go and get on back to the news here. Now, apparently over in Spain, the Spanish government is threatening direct rule of Catalonia from Madrid unless they drop their bid for independence. Now, so far, Catalonia has not actually issued a declaration of independence. They're saying they're willing to talk, but certainly not willing to give up their autonomy. And that's what Spain is basically threatening to do, is come on in and basically kick out Catalonia's version of a state capital and say, we'll run things from Madrid. I imagine that is going to inflame the situation a little bit more. Now, over at 12160.info, they're talking about this Stop Operation Soros and all these movements all across Europe that are jumping up to basically ban any groups, any non-governmental organizations funded by George Soros. And they have reason to be worried because we just got word from Investment Watch Blog. George Soros has just transferred $18 billion of his own personal fortune to the Open Society Foundation, which means he's getting ready to do something really, really major with all that money. Meanwhile, the senior Hungarian government minister is saying Soros is an agent of Satan because he's always attacking Christianity. And yes, that's been true as well. All right, let's take another phone call. Mateus in Canada. Aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind? Mateus in Canada.
Yeah, regarding what you...
Okay.
Hi, Michael. Regarding what you were saying about Spain and Catalonia, this is a typical bully strategy where the bully is like, if you do anything about this bully, and I'm going to kill you. They're disarmed, right? Catalonia is a disarmed population?
I don't know about the civil gun laws, but I can't imagine that they would have started this process for independence without having some prudently acquired some military means in a warehouse.
Oh, yeah. But as far as their political position is fairly weak because they're not officially like an armed population like America. But that's not why I called in. I wanted to talk about the Tory MP in Britain. There's a push for legislation that would bring life sentences for fatalities in car accidents, and this would include speeding. So you could be driving sober, and your only offense is that you were speeding, and then caused a death. And I want to point out that all of the speed limits are intentionally lower than practical. Like in America, there was a federal push to convince to arm twist all the states to lower the highway speed limits, that's just to make us all criminals at all times, so that the police can just at any moment just pull anybody over for speeding and do
right out a ticket. Want. Well, you know what's amazing?
There's a connection here.
What's really amazing is I'm old enough to remember when the standard highway speed limit in the United States was 65 miles an hour. And I remember the big debate when they started talking about the double nickel and how much money in fuel it was going to save for everybody. And they went in and implemented the 55 mile an hour speed limit. And as you say, the cops were out there just writing out the tickets of everybody who was just instinctively driving that faster speed. But as it turned out, driving at 55 didn't really result in any fuel savings that anybody could ever document.
Yeah, it just results in the government just being able to just at will mess with us. But the point I'm getting at here is this is attached to self-driving cars. I'm convinced that this is what this is actually about. They're claiming it's about saving 100 or 200 people every year that get killed in car accidents. But that's not true, because they obviously don't care about us getting killed, or they wouldn't be sending us over into illegal wars started with false flags for nation-building purposes.
No, they want to keep you. They want to keep you alive. They want to keep you alive until they send you into the war. Can we kind of get to the end of this thing? I'm not sure what's going on here, but we're getting a lot of people calling in with their personal troubles and everything, rather than the topics of the day. So you need to sum up on this.
Okay, so the summary is that it's not about the personal trouble at all. It's about a major threat facing all of us, which is there's this push, multinational effort to get us out of our cars and to accept self-driving vehicles. And by passing legislation that could put you in jail for life by making a driver error with a regular vehicle, what they're going to do is they're going to say, well, you'll have no liability if you just give up your vehicle, accept a robot federal pod, then you won't go to jail if you kill someone. And that's my only point, is that I just want to point out that the ulterior motive here, in my opinion, is part of the agenda of pushing self-driving vehicles. The major threat to our liberties.
We know, well, certainly the manufacturers of self-driving vehicles, they're looking forward to high sales. We know the globalists, the agenda used to be Agenda 21, now it's Agenda 30. They do want people out of personal transportation and using mass transportation, trains and buses and so forth and so on. As far as the issue of offering you no liability, it's never going to happen. The insurance companies are absolutely not going to go along with that. They're going to be pushing, saying even in a self-driving car, we'll give you a discount if a self-driving car, but driving insurance is still mandated. Anyway, listen, we're going to let you go, and thank you for the phone call. And once again, we will get on back to the news. Now, do you remember Jack Yantis was a rancher? Was killed 2 years ago after one of his 2,500-pound bulls was hit by a car and charged emergency crews on a highway just north of the tiny town of Council in west central Idaho. Yantis arrived with a rifle just as deputies decided to put down the animal. Authorities claim there was an altercation, and Yantis and two deputies fired their weapons. Even assuming for the sake of argument the deputy had probable cause, it was excessive force. And the family of Jack Yantis has now filed a wrongful death lawsuit accusing law enforcement officials of violating federal civil rights during and after the shooting. All right, let's take another phone call. Jerry in Chicago, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Aloha, Mike. That 70-year-old guy that called, I don't know, I guess that's happening in Hawaii. That was happening in Illinois, and it kind of stopped. But I noticed about 2 years ago, I went into the local beer store, and sometimes they run some really good deals where you might get a case of beer for like $12, $13 with tax. So when it's that cheap, I load up. Well, apparently, if you buy 9 cases or more, you have to fill out some kind of county form with all your information.
Yeah, I could see where they might wonder if you're actually reselling it somewhere, and that would make a lot of sense. Jerry, I want to put all these topics that were brought into today, the alcohol and the scanners and all the rest of it, it's sort of diluting the focus of the show. So, Jerry, we're going to let you go. Thank you very much for the phone call. We're going to close the lines so that I can actually get some real news done out here without everybody calling in and whining about how their cell phones are misbehaving here. Now, as you know, we have had these horrible wildfires up in Northern California, Sonoma County. A lot of wineries have been destroyed, including wineries we've visited, wineries that we know. And apparently they've arrested a homeless man on suspicion of arson in the wine country fires, Jesus Fabian Gonzalez. Now, he has admitted to starting a fire, saying he needed to keep himself warm. Authorities are questioning that because it was 74 degrees at the time. And he was seen basically leaving the scene where the fire started, and there's a huge fire already behind him. And here's where it gets interesting. He's an illegal immigrant. How's that for your sanctuary state there, Governor? So the U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement Agency has issued a detainer request on the Sonoma County Jail for this individual. That was well done here. Now, there's a big scandal over in Japan regarding Kobe Steel. And as America's steel industry has declined, Japan's steel industry has become the envy of the world, but it's about to get a major, major setback. And I'm a little surprised because my experience with the Japanese is they tend to be much more focused on actually producing a quality product, but maybe they've got American management over there. So it all began when it came on out that some of the steel being sold by Kobe Steel had actually failed validation testing. And the way that works is when they do a melt, when they do a pour, they get everything rolled on out for the cold roll, they'll grab a little piece of the metal and they will machine it down to a very specific size, thickness, length, and it's put in a machine that tests it to destruction. And that's how they verify the steel is going to be as strong as they want. And apparently they got caught faking some of that data. Now it's getting even worse because it turns out the company's been faking data on the quality of their steel for decades, and apparently went so far as to actually have a manual on how to manipulate the data and get the numbers that they wanted. And this is very, very scary because if you're talking about a kitchen appliance, that's one thing. If you're talking about steel that was used in the construction of a building, especially in an earthquake zone like Japan, boy, have you got a potential lawsuit. Now, Japan's earthquake code is very different from the U.S. In the U.S., the buildings are built to be flexible, to simply go with the quake but not collapse. Japan kind of went the other way for a long time, where they made their buildings as rigid as possible. And then they had a big quake, and some of these buildings, literally because of the rigidity, they shattered. So if Kobe has been making these I-beams and H-beams that are used in the construction of these buildings, and there's a failure at some point, I'm surprised. I guess Japan really has adopted the Western way of life here. All right, so let's briefly talk about Las Vegas. As you know, there was this hero security guard, the star witness of the Las Vegas shooting, and he all of a sudden, he was set up for a bunch of TV interviews, and he canceled, and he hasn't been seen. Now, Project Veritas operative Laura Loomer is saying that the Campos family may have had a gag order placed on them not to talk about the mass shooting case. Maybe. But apparently, Jesus Campos himself is now missing. And here's where it gets really juicy. Nobody can validate he's a legal United States citizen. Remember, there was that oddity about how he was working as a security guard in the hotel in a state where all security guards have to be registered with the state government. Now, if he turns out to be an illegal immigrant, then that explains why he wouldn't have gone through the registration process. And that may be the reason everybody got embarrassed and said, we can't let him talk. It's amazing. Now then, apparently this year's flu jab fails to protect at-risk patients from deadly infections. Young leukemia patients are just as likely to develop flu regardless of whether they had the shot or not. In other words, completely ineffective. Completely ineffective. Even more embarrassing, the CDC is now confirming that between the years 1955 and 1963, over 98 million Americans were given the polio vaccine that was contaminated with a known cancer-causing virus called simian volutating virus 40. And there was a huge surge in cancer immediately after that period of time. Cigarettes got the blame. I'm starting to wonder, were they being scapegoated? Did the vaccine industry have that kind of clout even back then to take down big tobacco? Certainly worth talking about, thinking about. We'll be right back. Aloha, America. Welcome back to the show here. We're talking about science and health issues for the remainder of our program. Apparently, there is an oncologist out there who is saying that women should dye their hair no more than 6 times a year. Apparently, these hair dye products are now seen as being cancer-causing. Maybe that's why the whole world is going crazy. We're just literally bathing in all these synthetic chemical compounds. And some of them have psychoactive effects. I mean, I go out there and some of these stories I read and I say, how can people behave like this? There's another story running around here about how Congress has its own in-building pharmacy, and apparently they get truckloads of stuff every single day, which would go a long way to explaining the behavior of our government. Now, here's another story. This came out of Natural News. Apparently, there's been a study done down in Mississippi, and they're now saying there is enough evidence that vaccines can contribute to the onset of type 1 diabetes, in addition to the other health problems we've already covered. As the National Vaccine Information Center reports, doctors first started noticing signs of trouble all the way back in 1949. And at that time, doctors reported that children who received the pertussis vaccine, which is now part of the DPT shot, had issues with maintaining normal blood glucose levels. And again, according to the National Vaccine Information Center, research conducted with mice confirmed that the pertussis vaccine would cause type 1 diabetes. And yet they want to just make it all mandatory. The state will decide what vaccines you'll get. The police will come in and hold your kid down while they stick a needle in him. Another report coming out of Natural News. Medical study conducted at the Ohio State University Wexner Medical Center found that women who received flu vaccines had a weakened immune system response in subsequent years. So what do the pharmacies tell you? Oh, get that flu shot every single year. Every single year. So the lead researcher on the study, Lisa Christian, PhD, concluded growing evidence shows that those who received a flu shot in the prior year have lower antibody responses in the current year. These chemicals are not making your immune system stronger, they're making it weaker. Look, if you want to buy into the vaccine stuff, go ahead, but I definitely reject the idea that government has a right to mandate that I take a certain vaccine or that children be vaccinated. Especially when you look at all the damage these vaccines are causing and the apparent lack of actual real benefit. It's like the old traveling Wild West medicine show. Just out to make money. Just out to make money. If it makes money, it's good. If it doesn't make money, it's bad. That's the American way. Now, back in 2015, AstraZeneca bought a majority stake in blood cancer biotech Acerta for $4 billion. And over the weekend, they announced that some of the early data for Acerta's drug, acalabrutinib, close enough, had been falsified. And AstraZeneca invested in Acerta for its Bruton triosine kinase inhibitor, which is this drug. And that drug is in a number of early, mid-stage, late-stage clinical trials across several blood cancers. But Acerta had to recently retract an abstract published in the medical journal Cancer Research 2 years ago that showed the drug as being effective in treating solid tumors in mice. They fibbed. Imagine my shock. We'll be right back. And aloha, America. Welcome back to the show here. And apparently over at the National Meningitis Association, they have a panel that is issuing a statement to the effect, no American has the right to refuse experimental vaccinations, and children must be held down by police while injected. That's the new attitude. So much for the idea of informed consent, where no medical practice is done on you without your permission. That's gone away here. And they're not talking about regular vaccines. They're talking experimental. They're using the American people as guinea pigs to try out their concoctions before they sell them to the rest of the world. Now, I'm old enough to have been a reader of Playboy magazine, and actually did read it. I looked at things other than the naked ladies. And I'm a huge fan of the cartoonist Gahan Wilson. And one of my all-time favorite cartoons of his is there's a clerk standing behind the counter at a pharmacy, and the drug bottles are all over, and it says pharmacy at the top. And on the floor in front of the counter is this pile of goo, wearing a pair of eyeglasses. And the pharmacist is looking at the bottle and saying, "Ho, ho, ho, we really did mess up this prescription, didn't we, Mr. Wilson?" And we laugh at it. But here we have this Meningitis Association saying, yeah, we're going to use experimental vaccines on you. Now, up until recently, the only time experimental drugs could be used on a patient is if that patient was terminal and near death. Because, I mean, what do you have to lose by trying this? But this disdain for the Hippocratic principle of first of all, do no harm, is very alarming. More and more, government just treats us like livestock. They decide what we eat. They decide what we can't eat, which may explain the obesity epidemic. They decide what medications we're not allowed to use. They decide what medications we must take. It's nasty. Let's take a phone call here. Andy in Texas, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Aloha, Michael. Well, just hearing you, it's kind of my comment has changed a little bit, but I'll get to what I was calling about. I mean, this is really pathetic to a point where our government can actually start telling us we have to put things in our body and whatnot. And they found a legal pathway to make that, validated. So people who see these courtrooms like that woman who got 10 days or something for not vaccinating her child, they found a legal pathway to force your child to take something you don't want your child to take. So that's beside the point. But here's what I really called about. We've got this legality thing here. It's funny how the laws only apply to us little people. Those of us who don't have no statue, we don't have anything to stand on, a pedestal or anything. We can't defend ourselves. And yet these people, when the Constitution applies to them, the Constitution is in full effect. But when you go in a courtroom in this country, you try to bring up the Constitution, you're nothing but shot down. I mean, you can't make your way through this courtroom with the Constitution in your hand. And that's most of us. I mean, a lot of us that have there's only a few people that haven't been in the courtroom before. I mean, because they're dragging everybody in there. But, they go in there with the perception that all I need is the Constitution by my side. I know where I got my rights violated. I know where this is all at. I know where this should be easily dismissed. And it doesn't work.
No, it doesn't. The government has gone off the constitutional reservation. And again, when you see this idea of states ordering parents to vaccinate their children, knowing that there is a high risk of harm and very little possibility of actual benefit, that tells you we're living in a dictatorship. They're forcing you to buy products you don't want and don't need and would probably rather avoid. But where the government will tell you what to do, because it's all about that money going to the pharmaceutical industry.
Well, hey, Mike, I know you're, I believe, an atheist, right?
Yes, I'm an atheist, thank God.
Oh, yeah, no, but, I mean, let's think about it. I mean, how could this real evil come about? I mean, even if you love the devil, you still got some consequences when you get there because you didn't perform well enough. You didn't do enough evil or whatever. And then if you're with God, you got all of this, well, hey, you didn't do enough, good. You didn't, so you're not here either. So, I mean, maybe these people have figured this out. That's how they can be so evil. How they can actually, do this stuff with impunitiveness, with no responsibility whatsoever, and not feel any guilt about it whatsoever.
Well, maybe because they understand the reality is they're not going to be held accountable for their actions in this lifetime,
exactly.
and there is no afterlife, so they're not worried about devils with pitchforks and stuff. And that's why they get away. They succumb to their basic human passions. And, not everybody who does not believe in God is bad. I like to think I'm a good human being. My wife certainly does, especially when I'm, teching for her choir group. But I've said all along, good people are going to do good things and bad people are going to do bad things, and occasionally they blame it all on religion. But we're looking at politicians and heads of corporations who have become addicted to money and power. And that's really what drives them.
And you just summed up everything I was trying to say right there.
Okay.
You just took everything I just said and you summed it up. I thank you. I really appreciate you, and God bless RBN. You guys are the spiritual. You are it. Thank you so much, sir.
All right, well, thank you very much here, and we're going to switch over to Gary in Arkansas. Aloha, Gary. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
It's in the U.S. Code. It's a law that's been passed by Congress that the feds can come in and experiment on large areas, let's say aerosol spraying, any chemical, biological, or nuclear experimentation on the people without their knowledge or consent. The only thing they have to do is notify one public official in that given area, and that public official does not have to inform the people. So that's how it's by law.
Well, there's a difference here. There's a difference here. First of all, most people don't even know that law exists. I have it quoted on the top of my article on biological warfare research conducted on unknowing citizens. But the difference here is that law specifically relates to Defense Department testing of potential weapons and weapons delivery systems. And it's very narrow in its scope. It doesn't apply to vaccines just being forced onto people just in general. In the civilian population, there's supposed to be this idea of informed consent, where the doctor will sit down and say, we want to try something, here's what it might do to help, this is what it might do to harm you, and you have to give us your signature on a consent form for us to proceed. Apparently that has now gone away, and again, when the government can come on in and force parents to inject these chemical soups into the kids' arms, knowing there is a potential for serious, permanent, lasting harm, and knowing that most of these vaccines have very little positive effect. In fact, you go back and you look at all these recent outbreaks of measles and mumps that are waved about to say, oh, you got to get your vaccination. See, we got all these sick kids. You need a vaccination. Then you find out the sick kids are the ones who got vaccinated.
One word of advice is all you have to do is set a piece of paper in front of that doctor that if he gives this injection, that he is going to pay for all your medical expenses for any damage related to that vaccine. As far as the police coming in and jabbing needles in your kids, that's a good reason to keep the shotgun right by the front door.
All right. Well,
that's all I've got to say.
I can understand how you feel that way, but remember, if you are injured by vaccines, you have no recourse in the court system. The vaccine manufacturers are indemnified by provision written into the Homeland Security Act. If you think you've been injured by a vaccine, you're supposed to go to the Vaccine Injury Court, which turns down most of the requests.
No, you sue the doctor.
Turns down most of the requests on the basis of this admitted fraudulent CDC document saying there's no link between vaccines and autism. Okay?
No, that's not provable. Look at the Amish; they don't have autism because they don't vaccinate. I'll talk to you later.
All right,
Bye.
Thanks an awful lot. I remember a few years ago where an Amish kid came down with autism, and the pro-vaxxers were out there saying, see, even the Amish get autism. It's not linked to the vaccines. And then it came on out that this kid had been adopted by his Amish parents, and prior to his adoption had been fully vaccinated. See, we're all dominated by the money. The money has taken on a life and a mind of its own. And all it wants is more money. Any way can get it. All right, another phone call. Al in Canada, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind? Al, oh, there you are.
The autism thing. Yep, I'm here. The autism thing. There was a story on the CBC yesterday about researchers in the University of British Columbia that did a paper linking aluminum and vaccines to autism in mice. And it was pulled because one of the co-authors claimed that the figures in the study were deliberately altered. So he hadn't realized until after allegations of data manipulation surfaced online. So what really happened?
Yeah. Well, we do know.
We all know that aluminum is a neurotoxin.
Yes. It is scary to think about how many things are put in these vaccines, injected into our children's bodies that are known to be harmful. Peanut oil is used as a vaccine adjuvant, leads to peanut anaphylaxis. Aluminum, definitely neurotoxic. In fact, a lot of evidence linking aluminum to the eventual development of Alzheimer's. It's like this whole forced vaccination is to make us all permanently, chronically ill so that the medical industrial establishment can profit off of us during our entire miserable, wretched lives.
It's a $2 trillion industry in the United States, Mike.
Yeah.
Right? It's over half, it's over 10% of your GDP.
Well,
there's a reason, like in the United States compared to Canada, let's just say with labor law, we go out like outrageously out of hand with safety, like job safety, right?
Yes.
And I know this for a fact because people from America have been up here and has said, this is ridiculous. And I said, you have to remember something. We pay for our own health care here. The taxpayer. We pay for our own health care. It's in our best interest to stay healthy. And yet, this sort of stuff comes out. And what happens if,
it's like the
if they get a jab and it hits the vein and it goes right into your bloodstream?
That can definitely happen. Has happened. Yeah. I remember back.
It has happened to me.
Back when I I used to donate blood on a regular basis because I have a rare blood type. And I remember the last time I went over there, they had this amateur on the needle who just kept jabbing and saying, whoa, that's a slippery vein you got there. And in the process, basically damaged the vein to where I had blood lividity all up and down this arm. And I never even really got to donate that day. I just reached a point and said, okay, Captain Ahab, I'm out of here. And it really was a bit of a mess. Okay?
You have a slippery vein, and apparently people have slippery discs. More nonsense.
Yeah. All right.
Anyway, I appreciate your time, Mike, but, that story was out there, and it's just like, wow, how did that get stifled? But we know it's money. It's like exactly
it's the money.
Exactly
these super large pharmaceutical corporations or genetic corporations, they've got enough money where they can buy the media, buy the public relations, buy the politicians, and it has led us into this dystopian society where, again, we're not allowed to make any decisions about our own body. The government will make the decisions for us, and the goal appears to make us constant, perpetual, chronic customers of the medical industrial complex. They don't want us healthy. If all Americans got healthy, the entire system would collapse. And so, in that context, I'm not surprised to find out that mandatory vaccines contain chemicals that can lead to type 1 diabetes. Because, treating diabetes, that's big money. So,
it's perpetual.
That's exactly right. Nobody wants a cure. They want treatments. They want you chronically ill under treatment.
Got it.
Okay? All right, we're going to let you go.
Mike.
Thank you very much. We're about running out of time here. And apparently there is a story that came out of the Daily Mail in Great Britain. Researchers are now saying that magic mushrooms, psilocybin, can actually reset the brains of depressed patients. That after going through the psilocybin experience, they found that these areas of the brain reintegrated and became more stable. And most participants felt immediate and continued relief from their depression. But this one will get stifled, because if you can actually cure somebody of depression with a magic mushroom, that's bad for business. We're in the business of selling prescription antidepressants, and it doesn't matter if they don't work and they're harmful. That's what we're here to sell you. We'll be back after these few words. And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show here. Somebody just sent me this very interesting article. The reason aluminum is now in our vaccines is to replace mercury. Everybody's making a big stink about, the mercury is bad for the kids and it's got to be banned. And it actually was banned quite a long time ago, but they kept on using it. And finally, they're getting upset about this. So they said, all right, we're going to get the mercury out. We're going to replace it with aluminum compounds. There's only one problem. Aluminum is even more neurotoxic than mercury. And apparently, there's this ebook linked below about aluminum vaccines and a neurological gamble. It's written by Neil Miller, director of the Think Twice Global Vaccine Institute, and it documents the hazards associated with aluminum-laden vaccines. Now, again, the reason the aluminum is there is they took the mercury out. They said, we'll just put some aluminum in there. But right now, it's a huge assault on the body. 2-month-old babies now receive 1,225 micrograms of aluminum from their vaccines. This is 50 times the safety levels declared by FDA, CDC, and so forth. They just want the parents to play Russian roulette with their children, because if the kids are brain damaged and they can't get elected to the Congress, that grand old asylum for the aged and infirmed, they're going to require a lot of care. Care that will cost money. We have to stop thinking of doctors and hospitals as concerned for our well-being. They're there to make a fast buck. They need us to be chronically ill. They want us to be sick and never, ever get well, so that we will give them our money and our obedience. We have a very close friend who is nearing the end, dealing with cancer. And everyone's saying he's not going to make it. He's got a DNR on his chart. And yet they're still out there pumping all these experimental chemicals into him. Will they work? Probably not. Do they cost a fortune? Yes. So America has indeed lost its moral compass. Our doctors don't heal. Our food does not really feed us. Our schools don't educate us. Our media does not inform us. Our politicians do not lead us. Everything is all about getting more of that ink and paper stuff. Taking it away from people who can't fight back, both in this country and other countries around the world. It is a sorry state that this nation has declined to, having lost that moral compass. I know it's nice to be rich, or I've heard it's nice to be rich, but there has to be a balance, and we've lost that balance. What's that Native American word? Koyaanisqatsi, life out of balance. We're there. There's the music. Time for me to get on out of here. I got to do Jim Goddard show up in Vancouver. Please stay tuned for John Stadmiller. He's got lots and lots of good things to share with you. And we'll be back here tomorrow on the Republic Broadcasting Network. So until then, aloha America.